When police arrived, they found a 21-year-old college student lying lifeless in her own apartment, textbooks scattered, phone still buzzing with missed calls. Her name was London Powers, a rising star at North Carolina Central University. But the man who ended her life wasn't a stranger. He was the one who once promised to love her forever. His name was Damien Tinsley, and what happened that night would expose a terrifying truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous person is the one who says, "I love you." You're watching Fatal Whispers, true stories that send chills down your spine. Subscribe and stay close.
Junior at North Carolina Central University pursuing social work and was due to start an internship at Durham Senior Center. Her friend Cheyenne Boyd sharing how London's empathy and care was contagious.
The light in every room, like every room she would walk in, she was just brighten up. She was just such a positive person, make light out of every situation.
London's mother, Tia Powers, was in town from Washington, D.C., now surrounded by her daughter's extended family.
I really appreciate everybody here. She loved you all tremendously. I wanted her to come home, and she's like, "Mom, I got this. I got to finish."
Tia wanted her daughter back at home because almost a month ago, London said her ex-boyfriend Damien Tinsley was violent towards her, even firing a gun which grazed her. Tia says London then filed a protective order, found a new apartment, and was in the midst of moving out when Tinsley showed up unannounced.
When they tell you that they're going to harm you or portray danger on you, you're gone. He's not worth it. And for parents who you know that your son or your daughter is out here portraying these bad things, help your son. It's not good that you sit back and think, "Oh, he ain't gonna know." That's a cry for help.
It was a warm August night in Durham, North Carolina, the kind that hums quietly, cicadas echoing under streetlights, the air thick with the promise of calm. But inside apartment 212 at Camden Point, calm was the last thing that existed. Neighbors would later recall hearing a woman's voice, sharp, pleading, then a single, thunderous crack that shattered the silence. Seconds later, another. And then, nothing. Just the faint echo of footsteps, and the soft thud of a body hitting the floor. When police arrived, the glow of blue and red lights bled through the blinds, painting the walls in cold color. Inside lay 21-year-old London Powers, a promising graduate student at North Carolina Central University, her life suddenly and violently stolen. And just feet away, the body of Damien Tinsley, the man she once loved, the man who'd pulled the trigger, and then turned the gun on himself. Two lives ended within seconds, but their story had been unraveling for months. A story of obsession, fear, and the haunting failure of warning signs that came too late. She had dreams of becoming a social worker, to help young women escape cycles of abuse and trauma. Yet, in a cruel twist of fate, she became the very tragedy she hoped to prevent. To the outside world, she and Damien looked like any young couple in love. But beneath the smiles and filtered photos, cracks were forming, cracks that would soon turn into something far darker. Police tape fluttered in the humid air that night, whispering softly in the breeze. The complex was quiet now, save for the low murmur of radios and the shuffling of officers documenting the scene. It wasn't just another domestic dispute. It was a story of repeated cries for help, ignored warnings, and the moment when love turned lethal. What no one knew then was that this tragedy hadn't started that night. It had been building, slowly, invisibly, one argument, one threat, one unanswered call at a time. And by the time anyone realized how dangerous it had become, it was already too late. Before the police sirens, before the heartbreak, before the headlines. There was just London and Damien. In photos, they looked happy. She, bright and ambitious, he, quiet but confident. Together they seemed inseparable, young, in love, and ready to build a future. But behind those smiles lived a slow-burning storm. London Powers had always been described as light. A Washington, D.C. native who'd earned her way into North Carolina Central University, she was studying for her master's in social work, a path fueled by empathy, determination, and a desire to make life better for others. Her friends said she had a way of listening that made people feel safe. Her professors called her driven. Her mother called her the joy in every room. Damien Tinsley was 23, a man still figuring out his place in the world. He met London through mutual friends while she was in school. To those who knew them, Damien seemed caring at first, protective, supportive, always there. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but he had a charm, a confidence that drew London in. They began dating, and for a while, everything looked picture perfect. Weekend trips. Late night calls. Plans for the future. But sometimes, what looks like love, is something else entirely. London's friends started noticing subtle shifts. Damien's texts became constant, his questions sharper. Where are you? Who are you with? Why didn't you answer sooner? At first, it was easy to dismiss as normal jealousy. But soon, it grew heavier. He wanted to know everything, where she was, what she was doing, who she talked to. And if she didn't answer fast enough, his tone changed. Still, London tried to believe the best in him. She saw the good, the man he could be, not the man he was becoming. She told her friends he was just a little protective. She didn't want to think the man she loved could hurt her. But love can be a dangerous thing when it becomes control. As months passed, the relationship grew strained. London was balancing school, work, and her dreams, while Damien seemed to be losing his grip on all three. Arguments flared, about her schedule, about her friends, about her independence. He didn't want to share her with the world she was building. And London was beginning to realize she had to choose between her future and her safety. Her mother would later say, she was trying to get away. Those words would haunt her. Because by the summer of 2025, the relationship that had once been filled with promises was now saturated with fear. London had made the decision, she wanted out. She was ready to move on, to reclaim her peace, to take back the pieces of herself that Damien had slowly tried to control. But Damien, he wasn't ready to let her go. And the closer she got to freedom, the closer he got to the edge. It began quietly. A late-night argument. A bruise she tried to hide. A phone call to her mom that ended in tears. At first, no one wanted to believe that Damien was capable of real violence. He was soft-spoken, polite around friends, the kind of man who said, "Yes ma'am," and "No sir." But behind closed doors, that calm exterior began to unravel. London saw it before anyone else, the flashes of rage, the unpredictable silence that came before the storm. Neighbors would later recall hearing yelling, sometimes loud enough to echo down the hallway. Then, sudden silence. London would show up to class the next day quieter than usual, avoiding questions, brushing off concern with a tight smile. Her friends knew something was wrong. But how do you ask someone if they're in danger, especially when they're trying to pretend they're not? By early summer, the tension had reached a breaking point. London had started telling people close to her that she was scared. Damien's temper was getting worse. He'd begun showing up uninvited, lurking near her building, calling her dozens of times a day. When she tried to distance herself, he'd apologize, flowers, promises, tears. And then, within days, the cycle would start again. According to her mother, London reached out to the police more than once. She told them she feared for her life. She told them he had a gun. She told them that one night, he even shot at her, grazing her arm. It should have been the ultimate red flag. But nothing changed. No arrest, no follow-up strong enough to protect her. She was trying to move out, to finally escape, but even that decision became dangerous. Damien knew she was leaving, and to him, it wasn't just a breakup. It was rejection, humiliation, loss of control. And for a man like him, control was everything. The messages grew darker. The visits more desperate. He told her he couldn't live without her. He told her if he couldn't have her, no one could. Each warning sign was brighter than the last, but by the time the system reacted, the story was already written. Friends later said London began sleeping with her phone in her hand. She'd double-lock her doors. Still, she believed she could handle it, that if she stayed calm, if she stayed polite, she could walk away quietly. But obsession doesn't let go quietly. By mid-August, she had packed her bags. She was ready to start over, a new place, a new beginning. But Damien was watching. Every red flag had been raised. Every alarm had been rung. And yet, help never truly came. On the night she tried to leave, he showed up one last time. And what happened next would shake the city, and leave a family forever shattered. August 14, 2025. The air in Durham, North Carolina hung heavy, humid, the kind of air that clings to your skin and slows time. The streets around Camden Point Apartments were quiet, just another summer night. Inside, London Powers was packing the last of her things. Cardboard boxes. Folded clothes. A framed photo turned face down on the counter. She was leaving for good, leaving the apartment she once shared with Damien Tinsley. Friends said she was nervous, but hopeful. This move wasn't just physical, it was emotional freedom, a new beginning after months of fear. She'd told her mother she'd call once she was done moving. That call would never come. At 9:42 p.m., a neighbor heard a car pull up fast, tires crunching gravel, headlights sweeping across the windows. Then came footsteps. Heavy. Determined. Damien Tinsley had arrived. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He came in angry. Witnesses would later say there was shouting, short, sharp bursts of words, London pleading, Damien pacing, his voice rising like a storm that had finally broken free. The fight didn't last long. Seconds, maybe. Then, the first gunshot. A crack that tore through the still night, echoing down the hallway. Another shot followed. And then silence. When neighbors opened their doors, the hallway smelled of gunpowder and panic. Some called 911, others stood frozen, staring at the door that would not open again. Inside, London lay on the floor, motionless. The same woman who dreamed of helping others escape pain was now a victim of it. And nearby, Damien Tinsley. Gun in hand. A single bullet wound. His life ended by his own doing. When officers arrived, the scene was surreal. 2 young lives, gone within minutes. No struggle to save, no suspect to chase. Just the aftermath of something that should never have happened. The soft hum of police radios filled the apartment as investigators moved through the small space, the half-packed boxes, the open suitcase, the shoes by the door. A life interrupted mid-escape. Outside, blue and red lights washed over the complex. Residents gathered in the parking lot, whispering, their faces pale under the flashing sirens. The story spread fast, a shooting, a young woman, her ex-boyfriend, both dead. But the words felt hollow. None of them captured what had really happened, the months of control, the ignored warnings, the quiet terror that led to that night. Detectives later pieced together the final moments. London had been trying to move her belongings when Damien showed up. He confronted her, an argument erupted, and within moments, he pulled the trigger. After ending her life, he turned the gun on himself. It was over before anyone could intervene. Before anyone could knock. Before anyone could save her. The sound of those gunshots marked the end of London's story, but for her family, her classmates, her community, it was just the beginning of a lifetime of unanswered questions. And as dawn broke over Durham the next morning, the world kept turning. Students headed to class, commuters filled the roads, the sun rose bright and unforgiving. But inside Camden Point, time stood still. 2 lives gone, and 1,000 lives changed forever. When the sun rose over Durham that August morning, the world looked the same. But for those who lived at Camden Point Apartments, the air felt different, heavier, haunted. Yellow tape fluttered in the summer breeze, the faint smell of gunpowder still clinging to the stairwell. What had once been a home was now a crime scene. Detectives arrived early. Cameras flashed, evidence markers dotted the floor. The bodies of London Powers and Damien Tinsley lay only a few feet apart, a grim tableau of love turned lethal. It was a murder-suicide, yes. But beneath that label, investigators knew there was a deeper story, one of failure, fear, and ignored warnings. The crime scene told part of it. London's belongings were scattered near the doorway, boxes, keys, a half-zipped suitcase. It was clear she'd been preparing to leave. Nearby, a small handgun lay on the carpet. The weapon that ended both lives belonged to Damien. The first reports came quickly. London Powers, 21 years old, graduate student at North Carolina Central University. Damien Tinsley, 23, her ex-boyfriend. Police confirmed that the two had been in a volatile relationship, one that had ended, at least for London, long before the bullets were fired. As officers canvassed the area, neighbors spoke of arguments. Yelling. A man's voice raised in anger late at night. Some said they'd seen police cars there before. Others admitted they'd heard gunshots weeks earlier, just one, a pop, in the night. London's mother would later reveal that was when Damien had shot at her once before, grazing her arm. She had survived that night. But her warnings went unanswered. According to her mother, London had reached out for help multiple times in the weeks before her death. She told authorities that Damien was stalking her, harassing her, that she was scared. Each time, the system turned slowly, too slowly. No restraining order was enforced. No arrest was made. She was left to protect herself. In the days following the murder, investigators combed through Damien's phone and social media. The messages painted a chilling picture. Dozens of calls. Unanswered texts filled with apologies, threats, declarations of love twisted with anger. I can't live without you. If you leave me, I'll end it. And then, silence. The timeline became clear. London was packing. Damien found out. He drove to the apartment. In a matter of minutes, the confrontation turned fatal. There was no struggle, no forced entry. She had likely let him in one last time, perhaps to talk, to end things peacefully. Instead, he brought the weapon he'd already used once before. This time, he didn't miss. Detectives could only document what was left behind, the fragments of two lives and the echoes of countless opportunities to stop the inevitable. In their reports, the case closed quickly, murder-suicide. But to London's family, it was never that simple. Because behind every closed case is a story of what could have been prevented. In the following days, the Durham Police Department faced difficult questions. Had London's previous reports been taken seriously? Was she ever offered protection, or just paperwork? Did anyone realize how close she was to dying? There were no easy answers. The system that was supposed to protect her had failed in silence. The investigation wrapped up quietly, with statements and press releases, cold, procedural words for a tragedy that was anything but. And when the evidence was logged, when the photos were sealed in folders and the detectives moved on to the next case, London's story didn't end. It lived on in the memories of everyone who loved her, and in the guilt of those who realized too late what the warning signs truly meant. Because for London Powers, justice came too late. And for Damien Tinsley, remorse came only after the trigger was pulled. There would be no courtroom drama. No jury. No defense. No chance for cross-examination, or closure. Because the man responsible, Damien Tinsley, was already dead. For the Durham Police Department, the case was technically closed within days, murder-suicide. The paperwork was filed. The weapon matched his fingerprints. Ballistics confirmed it. There was no question of who had pulled the trigger. But for London Powers' family, closure was an illusion, something that looked neat on paper but felt hollow in reality. Her mother, Monica Powers, sat in front of reporters just days later, her voice trembling but steady. She spoke of her daughter's dreams, her plans to graduate, her desire to help others, her laughter that filled every room. And then she asked the question that hung in the air like a ghost. Why wasn't she protected? Because London had done everything she was supposed to do. She called for help. She reported the threats. She tried to leave. But each time, her fear was met with procedure, not protection. There would be no trial, but there was judgment, not from a judge, but from the public. Across social media, the story spread like wildfire. Photos of London smiling in her graduation gown, paired with headlines that made her seem like just another statistic. NCCU student killed by ex-boyfriend in murder-suicide. But she was more than a headline. She was a warning that went unheeded. At North Carolina Central University, grief rippled through campus. Professors cried quietly in offices where her papers still sat on desks. Students gathered for vigils, candles flickering in a warm August breeze. Her classmates wore black and held hands, the words, "We miss you, London," written on poster boards. They spoke not just of loss, but of frustration, of a system that seemed to react only when it was too late. Local advocates began calling for reform in how domestic violence cases were handled, especially those involving repeated calls for help. London's case became a rallying cry, proof that fear should not have to end in death before action is taken. Meanwhile, Damien Tinsley's name was whispered, not spoken. His family, too, faced the weight of what he'd done, a mix of grief and horror. To them, he was a son, a brother, a man they thought they knew. But to the rest of the world, he was a killer, a man who chose violence over peace, control over love, and death over accountability. Because there would be no sentencing. No apology. No redemption. The court of public opinion rendered its own verdict. The story of London and Damien became a tragic lesson, a case study in what happens when warning signs are ignored, when love becomes possession, and cries for help are met with silence. And though there was no trial, the echoes of one remained. Every news interview, every campus memorial, every mother who heard London's story and saw her own daughter in it, all became part of a greater reckoning. A collective voice demanding change. The gavel may never have fallen in a courtroom. But in the hearts of those who knew her, the verdict was clear. The system failed London powers. The days after the tragedy passed in slow motion, a blur of sirens, headlines, and heartbreak. For London Power's family, the world had gone quiet, yet unbearably loud. Every corner of their home whispered her name, her laughter, her plans, her dreams. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her notebooks were still open, pages filled with the handwriting of a future that would never be written. Her mother, Monica, replayed the same moments over and over, the calls, the messages, the nights London said she was scared. She had tried to protect her daughter, begged her to leave sooner, and when she did, it was already too late. At London's funeral, Monica stood before a sea of candles, clutching her daughter's graduation photo, the same one that had been all over the news. Tears streaked her face as she said softly, she had so much to give. She just wanted peace. The crowd that day stretched far beyond friends and family. Professors from North Carolina Central University, classmates, neighbors, even strangers came, not just to grieve, but to bear witness. To say her name. To promise that she wouldn't be forgotten. Across the campus, flowers piled up under a photo of London smiling in her NCCU sweatshirt. Her classmates lit candles and told stories, about her kindness, her work ethic, her dreams to help women facing abuse. The irony was crushing. London had wanted to heal others. Instead, she became a symbol of the pain she fought against. Her death ignited something, a movement, small at first, but powerful. Students began hosting domestic violence awareness meetings. Local shelters reported an uptick in women seeking help, citing London's story. Police departments in the region faced mounting pressure to review their response protocols for domestic calls. People began asking the hard questions. Why wasn't she believed? Why wasn't she protected? Why did the system wait until it was too late? For some, those questions became too heavy to carry. For others, they became fuel, a reason to fight for change. Even those who had never met her felt the weight of her loss. Her story became one of warning and awakening, the quiet tragedy that turned into a collective outcry. But for Monica, for her family, no reform or awareness campaign could ever fill the void London left behind. Their home was forever split between before and after. Before, when laughter filled the rooms. After, when silence did. As weeks turned to months, the Camden Point apartments went back to being just another complex. The police tape was gone, the walls repainted, the next tenants moved in. But the energy there had changed. For those who remembered, it was impossible to walk past apartment 212 without feeling the chill of what happened inside. The echo of a life cut short, and the question that still lingers. How many more Londons will there be before something truly changes? Because this wasn't just one tragedy. It was a mirror, reflecting how often cries for help go unanswered until they become screams. London Powers was 21 years old. A daughter, a student, a friend. She wanted to make the world safer for others. And though her story ended too soon, her voice didn't die that night. It carried on through every woman who now dares to speak up, through every call for change that refuses to be ignored. Her life was more than her death. And her death was more than a headline. This is the echo that remains. A whisper that refuses to fade, a warning wrapped in love and loss. And maybe that's what Fatal Whispers is truly about. Not the violence itself, but the silence that comes before it. So I'll leave you with this question. When someone says they're scared, how many times do we need to hear it before we finally listen? If London's story moved you, don't let it end here. Help her voice echo beyond this scream. Hit like, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Fatal Whispers for more true stories that must never be forgotten. Turn on notifications, because every whisper tells a story.